You are listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Baskar Sundaram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Caves,
we will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry.
Today's guest is David Bol. As Senior Vice President of Consulting at Shipley Associates, David Bol has over 30 years of experience as a Senior Proposal Manager, helping clients win more than $220 billion of revenue. He has co-authored 3 books for APMP that still influence winning business development practices today. David is APMP certified at the professional level, is an APMP Fellow, and co-founded the Rocky Mountain APMP Chapter. He earned the Visionary Award guiding the APMP group through the 90s. He has held every international APMP board position, including being CEO of the Board of Directors in 2009. Welcome, David, to Scribble Talk. It's great to have you with us.
It's good to be here, guys. Good to be here.
So, David, we're going to start kind of in the beginnings. We're curious where you were born, where you grew up, and where you got your education.
You know, Ashley, I was born in the Midwest. I was born in southeast Chicago and moved around quite a bit in the Mideastern states. My father, kind of similar to a military background, we had 7 homes by the time I had gotten to high school.
Wow.
So high school was finally settled down in Kansas City on the Kansas side, went to high school in Kansas City. And then, my choice for college of all things was veterinary medicine, and I didn't get accepted, but that drove my choice to go to Kansas State versus the University of Kansas. And so out in the middle of the plains of Kansas, kind of, if you will, I Kansas State University Wildcat.
Oh, wow. So what did you end up studying then?
Well, after 2 years and I went through the process of trying to get, and there was 103 openings for roughly 1,200 of us, and it just didn't work out that year. And so my final degree was business information systems. I kind of guessed at that point in time that the communication industry was about to explode, and so kind of a business major with telecommunications as a specific endeavor within that industry.
Oh, very interesting. So did that lead you to your first job?
Yes, and I mean, my first job was incredibly specific to telecommunications. I managed a aquarium store in a mall, so I mean, absolutely nothing to do with that. But it was a job, and it allowed me to put out some resumes and get started. And so, it was just one of those things that it was the first job offered close to home, and so what the heck? I learned all about tropical fish.
Love it. So when did you enter the proposal world then?
After I got out of school in Kansas, I decided that my love was the state of Colorado, and so I moved out here at the end of the 80s. And I got involved with U.S. West. And in the beginning, U.S. West was exclusively a monopoly, and so if you wanted telecommunications services, you didn't have a choice. And so our win rate was pretty high because it was either telephone service from U.S. West or, you had smoke signals. So anyway, our win rate was high, but what was happening was the deregulation was bringing in competition, and all of a sudden the AT&T world, the telecommunication world, was considered slow and archaic. And we determined, U.S. West determined, that we were getting now beat pretty regularly by all these startups because we were not moving very quickly. And so U.S. West sanctioned a lady and I to go out and look at what it would take to win. And so I contacted David Winton of the Association of Proposal Management Professionals, and so he got me involved with APMP because I wanted to go find out in the proposal world, in the world of competition, who is doing it well. And David gave me a list of 40 companies to go out and interview. His only requirement was I had to write a book of my findings. And so that did two things. That created my entry into APMP in the late 80s, and it forced me to write a first book for APMP. So it was a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did you get into kind of the training arena for proposals and business development?
Well, so coinciding with understanding that we were losing, we needed to understand what it would take to win. And we didn't have the slightest idea. You know, before it was like you wanted telecommunication systems, you didn't have a choice. Now you had all kinds of choices, and we were losing now a lot. And so we decided within our group at US West that we needed to be trained. And so we said amongst ourselves who had the best training. And at that point in time, we felt there was a lot of competitive trainers out there, but we felt the best training was Shipley. And so we brought in this Shipley class on how to write for federal proposals, and ironically at that point in time, Steve Shipley was the trainer. And so Steve and I, it was kind of just ironic. And so Steve and I struck up a friendship. He trained us in 3 different classes over the first couple of years, and every time he came, at least once, if not twice, after the training, I would go out to have dinner with him, and we just became really good friends. And so when US West broke up, and I had a couple interim jobs, but Steve finally called and said, "When are you going to come work for me?" And I said, "No, as a matter of fact, I'm unemployed, so now would be a good time." And he said, "Done." And so, you know, that was in the early 2002.
Oh, that's great. And so you've done a lot of trainings. Do you have a most memorable training effort that you've led?
Well, I think, you know, it's training's always fun because, you know, you get to tell people about what you love. I don't look at it as kind of a chore or difficult. It's just kind of fun to share your experience. You know, I think I bring an awful lot of experience to the table. And so I think my most memorable training experiences have been actually in the last few years. When Ed Alexander stepped down from Shipley as the approved trainer for our organization, I was next in line. So over the last few years, I've trained a lot of people to take their foundation test for the APMP certification. And so far, everybody that I've trained has passed. And so that's been, I'm not thinking, you know, I mean, the success rate's about 90% to begin with. So, you know, I mean, it's, you just have to understand that it's APMP's best practices. It's not necessarily your thoughts and your beliefs. It's more what APMP considers best practices. But, you know, I helped shape some of those. You know, I helped to manage some of those. And so to sit and talk with these people, and then, you know, an hour after they put their pens down, usually within that hour, I have all their tests graded. So to send out 35, 40, 45 texts in the next hour saying, "You all pass," it's wonderful. Then they usually meet me at the APMP conference, and we share drinks. And it's wonderful.
Yeah, great way to celebrate.
It is, yeah, you know, but you got to be careful because there's 40 of them, and I certainly can't handle 40 beverages a night. So, I mean, you know, you just kind of say, "Hey, congratulations," and you know, and let's prepare you for the next level. So it's wonderful.
That is wonderful. So you have been a huge impact with APMP and the industry. Do you have an accomplishment that you are most proud of?
You know, I'm proud of the fact that I and a couple of the US West people in the late 80s started the APMP Colorado chapter. At the time, it was, you know, I mean, the Midwest was not certainly the hotbed of proposals. I mean, southern, or pretty much the D.C. area, southern Arizona, and Phoenix and Scottsdale was huge, and southern California had a lot of proposal work. But Colorado in and of itself, yeah, we had a few defense contractors, and we've picked up a few space contractors. But wow, I thought, okay, I believed in the importance of APMP. Let's get it going. And for the first few years, other than the national capital area, we had the second largest proposal chapter in terms of members.
Oh, wow.
It included the whole state. Yeah, it was big. It included the whole state, and there was some significant presence out on the western slope. So and this was way before teleconferencing and stuff like that. So we were proud of that fact. And when we held a conference at the Broadmoor in 1998, at that time it was the most popularly attended conference in the APMP's history. And then when we had our second conference about 6 years ago in Denver, at that time it was the most popularly attended conference. So people like Denver, and we've worked hard, and we're trying to resurrect that excitement in Colorado, and I'm part of that again, and it's a lot of fun. There's good people, and there's a thirst, and the Front Range is now being recognized as the space capital, I think, of the world, with all the space industries, and so it's exciting to see the resurgence.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So you've been in the proposal industry for quite a while. Is there a quote-unquote old-fashioned way of doing proposals that you feel is better than the way we're currently doing proposals?
Well, I'm old-fashioned, so everybody has to recognize that. I still remember proposals on a typewriter, so that dates me, when we first were doing proposals where you had desktop publishing capability on a Macintosh. That was incredible. I can remember when there was language in proposals that actually says the use of color is excessive, and the thought was, if you're using color, you're excessive, and perhaps your price is excessive, and so you don't want to use color, and you're thinking, oh my goodness. And so we've come a long way for that. But to answer your question, I still think we have to follow the steps. I think for me, I believe the most important step in a proposal is the capture phase, and a lot of people will maybe not do that as well as they should because they don't know where the money's coming from. The government has not done us any favors by continually shifting proposals to the right and not holding true, and so a lot of this capture money sometimes is spent, or it runs out, or the investment is just not thought of as being the most sound investment in a proposal. But actually, at Baskar, let me tell you, good capture is absolutely critical to the probability of winning, and poor capture equally is as bad and affects your probability of winning. And so my passion, if people talk to me long enough, they'll understand that I believe that a proposal is won or lost in the capture phase. Sure, that writing, customer focused, graphic rich, benefits versus features, customer focused, all those things make for a good proposal productive response. But if the message is not there because you don't have the intelligence, a lot of times it'll go for naught.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, David. So great message.
Yeah.
Okay, last one of the first round. Can you tell us 3 things that not many people know about you?
Okay. Ouch, here comes the deep secrets. So probably the first thing that most people don't know about me is I have one of the largest model railroaders of my scale in the state of Colorado permanently installed in my basement. And so I think it's important that all of us need a relief from the stress and the 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 anxieties that proposal and business development bring. And so for the last 25 years, an hour here, an hour there, to where it's added up to thousands of hours. I have a huge model railroad in my basement, and so that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
With my oldest daughter, I'm trying to learn how to fly fish. I spent way too much time in offices surrounded by, proposal war rooms and so on. And, I live in one of the most beautiful states in the United States. And so to get up into the streams and into the wildness of Colorado and to fly fish now, I firmly believe that a bad day fishing is better than a good day in the office. And certainly I have many bad days where we don't catch a whole lot, if any. But still, it's just a ton of fun being up there and spending time, of course, with my daughter. And then the third thing, I'm getting a little old, but, I tried to, for a while, especially when I came out from Kansas and in my youth, I spent a lot of time on the tennis courts and was a competitive tennis player and participated and did fairly well in USTA tennis. And so that was kind of fun, but unfortunately, proposal work took over that to where I couldn't, participate as much as I want to. So it became more of a recreational instead of a competitive interest.
Very cool. Do you still play tennis?
My daughters were my hitting partners, and both my daughters played very competitive tennis, won all the way into college. And so once they left, it's like a lot of things that we need to discipline ourselves outside of the proposal world. If we do not make time for it and force ourselves to do it, a lot of times we just don't. So, another message would be is like I started this conversation off with you, get outside and enjoy the sunset. If you have time on the weekends, or if a court's near you, or you can participate in league tennis to where, say every Wednesday night you go out with your men and, you participate. Those were some of the best memories. Who cared about the tennis? It was, just the interaction with the guys afterward over some beverages and some snacks and sitting on the side of the courts for an hour and a half and just catching up and being human. That was a ton of fun.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It'll be so nice when things are back to normal and we're able to participate in those types of activities.
Exactly.
Wow, David, I think from the first book that you wrote, David, interviewing the 40 companies on best practice, when was that, David?
Baskar, I wrote that book at the end of the 80s, and that was a result of interviewing all those people. And that first book was best in class because that's what we were after. US West wanted to know what it's going to take. And we had a list of about 40 questions, and when we got an interview with these people, US West was gracious enough to send Elaine and I throughout the United States. We would send this questionnaire off, and we got answers to almost all of them because we pre-sent these questions out. And so we learned some very good things from some very, very powerful companies who shaped the proposal world as we know it today. So we sat down and we wrote a book that was, at that point in time, those that were doing it best in class. And it was an eye-opener because, like I said, we didn't care initially at US West because we were the monopoly, and if you wanted telecommunications in our 14 states, that was it. And all of a sudden we had to compete, and we had to compete to win. And now we had to learn how to win, and it was a real eye-opening experience. And I think that book still defines some of the proposal guidelines and some of the proposal practices that we adhere to today. So, was it a thing that I wanted to do because I thought I could? No, it was a thing that I was tasked to do because of David. But I learned as much from it as I think some of the folks that read it. So, a fun book.
Yes. Do we still have the copy of the book available somewhere online or printed copy, David?
Okay, so you got to remember when that book was written. I don't think there was online in 1988. 88, 89. So yes, I have a copy. Everything back then was pretty much black and white and 3-ring binders. And so when David Winton was cleaning out his office, and it's interesting fact, I was the president and the CEO of the board of directors, and it just coincidentally was under my tenure that I was the group that led the hiring of Rick Harris. So, David was cleaning out his office, and he sent me the 3 books that I had authored, and so I do have a hard copy of all those. I'm guessing just because of when they were written and the technology that was available at that time, I'm guessing they're not online.
Sure, David. At some point, we will make it online. So,
certainly.
Yeah. Sorry, David. So that was the first book, isn't it, David? Or what are the other 2 books?
The other 2 books was once we did the Best in Class, I got involved with Howard Nutt, who you've interviewed, and Howard Nutt was beginning to look at benchmarking and beginning to look at the Best in Class kind of stuff from a capability maturity model. And so we thought, okay, the next step would be what are the best practices? Okay, we've done Best in Class, but what can we replicate, and how can we stature these so that you can go from an ad hoc, which is level 0, to his level 5, which is the highest level of his capability maturity model. And so we paralleled his business maturity model. The second book was just a book on benchmarking and where you had to stack up and where you had to compete. In other words, if you wanted to be a good proposal, here are some of the things, like reusable material in a proposal library, like starting way out to the left with capture planning instead of, back then the mentality was, oh, hey, a proposal's been released, now it's time to start on it. And that mentality was, at that point in time, you've lost. But, nobody really knew how to do capture, and so a lot of efforts were made in capture planning, and so we had a book on benchmarking. And then the third one, just out of curiosity, we started with APMP's growth and this whole world of business development. What, in fact, were the salaries and what, in fact, were the pay grades of people who worked in the proposal industry? So a guy by the name of Don Stewart and I, Don is down in the Phoenix area, Don and I wrote the first APMP salary survey. We took a look at 11 categories that are typically associated with the proposal world: a proposal manager, a capture manager, graphic artist, a contracts person, so on. And we did an awful lot of research as to what was the appropriate salary, and we looked at basically a Western salary range for these, and we looked at an Eastern because the Eastern Seaboard was a little bit more expensive and a higher class of salaries out there. And then we said, okay, if you don't have these salaries, how do you fill in the gaps? Because, for example, if you don't have a legal person or contractual person on your team, you better have a contractual review of your proposal before you submit it. What do you have to do? And so you have to retain a legal counsel of some kind, and what does that cost? So it was a very thorough book back then, and I think it's gone through, maybe now as many as 5 reiterations. Same basic concept, but I think the APMP group now, every 3 or 4 years takes a look at upgrading it, and so I'm just proud that, it was Don and I, we did the first one back then. And then the fourth book was when I was CEO, a lot of new chapters. Dick Easom, before his individual interest in growing APMP was at the chapter level, and so we wanted to open up a whole lot of chapters, and that was very well received. But there was some frustration as to who should be part of the individual chapters, board, and what roles should they have, and so I and a couple other people took it upon ourselves that we wrote this guidebook that says, okay, here's what's available to you from APMP. to help start a chapter. Here's what each one of your leaders within your board of directors at the chapter level should be doing. Here's some guidelines as to how to collect money, how to advertise, how to include members, how to have what kind of activities to hold on a weekly basis, or not a weekly but a monthly when you're having chapter. So I mean, it was just a good guidebook to help the individual chapters. And then one of the things we initiated at the chapter that I was the first to do was we had that event the first afternoon of the first day of the conference for all the chapter officers to come and have a massive roundtable to help and hear what other people were doing to maybe overcome some of their frustrations. And it's been very well received, and it's been a part of every conference since. So a lot of good stuff.
Going back to the APMP as an association, David, because the Rocky Mountain chapter that you founded, David, was it part of the Colorado chapter?
It was. I mean, one of the things that we faced was we had a significant populace in Denver, but then just 45 miles from the south edge of Denver to the north edge of Colorado Springs, we recognized that we had a significant populace in Colorado Springs, and then Western Slope, that was a few hundred miles, but all of them had people who wanted to participate, and so we tried very hard to hold meetings. Again, there was no such thing as teleconferencing back then. You got to remember, this is back in the 80s, and so we had meetings where we were on the south edge of Denver, the north edge of Colorado Springs, and we could get meetings on a quarterly basis where we had 40 or 45 people. And again, there was no other way of putting out this information except face-to-face. And so, we were creative, we were fun. Like, for example, one of our favorite activities around Thanksgiving, we had an early Thanksgiving meeting, and we had people bring in copies of executive summaries that they had written, and we wrote those, passed those around, and we acted like a review board. And the top 3 got frozen turkeys. So sounds kind of stupid, but it was a lot of fun. And it was one of our most popular meetings because, let me tell you, these people were proud of their executive summaries, and these frozen turkeys meant a big deal to them. So, I mean, we worked hard at that. And so we had a good, we had Loral and Lockheed. We had U.S. West at the time, which was, AT&T, spinoff, and we had some other space agency companies. And so, I mean, it was a good group of people. And, back then, APMP's makeup was that if you hosted a conference, you were to receive 5% of the profits. And so now that structure is significantly different, but back then that's how it worked. And so, we had the Broadmoor Hotel, and we were petrified because prior to the Broadmoor Hotel, the 2 conferences before that were at Disney World, and I'm thinking, oh my God, who doesn't want to go to the Disney World? And then after that, the next conference was in San Francisco, and it was the heart of San Francisco, and you're like, oh my God, who doesn't want to go to San Francisco? And in both conferences, we're promoting the Broadmoor Hotel in Colorado Springs, and there is nothing around the Broadmoor Hotel like there is Disney World and San Francisco. And we're thinking this is going to be a failure. And like I said, this was 1998, and it was the most popularly attended conference at that time. And we still have people. We had an event at the Flying W Ranch, which was country music, hillbilly style, in the throes of Colorado, and so on and so forth. And we had 500 people at a sit-down steak dinner. And I still have some people that remember that and come up and tell me what a wonderful event that was. And so, I think the message there is get a good group of people, start early. It's usually the same people that are officers of your club, of your your individual APMP Chapter, and so you don't want to work them to death because they have full-time jobs and families. And so start early and get some good people in key roles. And we pulled off two outstanding conferences in Colorado that have been very popularly attended, and I think that people got a lot of the content that was delivered.
That's amazing, David. And is there any other conference? I assume you attended pretty much most of the conferences all the way back from the early 1990s to now, David, or did you miss any conferences in between?
Yeah, I've missed a couple. I mean, Shipley tries to disperse who can go. And I mean, in the past, it's been kind of, I've had the western half of the United States, everything from kind of the Mississippi West, and we've had a similar position. Eric Gregory, in fact, you've interviewed him. He was in the East. And so, I mean, if it was out on the East Coast, if it was in Washington, D.C., for example, or down in Orlando or Boston, some of those areas, Shipley would determine who should go. We have a whole bunch of free members that are allowed to go because of the sponsorship level that we participate in, but it's still kind of costly, and so we try and get some of our sales people there so that they can meet and talk to some of the people that'll be there. We try and get some of our people that'll benefit from being at APMP, and so we send them there, and if there's spots left over, I would go. Now, up until a few years ago, I submitted a topic, and I was pretty much fortunate to be selected to present. So I presented at an awful lot of APMPs. In fact, one of the notorious things I had as an accomplishment was Rick had this idea that he was going to televise, and so he taped people's presentations for a future television release. And I don't think you remember that because it never matured, but I was the first one that got stood up in front of a large audience and said, hey, and I was mic'd and wired and totally scared, but, and I actually, and if you know me, you know that this is not part of me. I actually, before I went on, I had to sit in Rick Harris's room and go through a makeup session so that I look good, and it's like, that's not me at all. Just, I'm going to go out there in a shirt, and I've had a good a class at not at US West, but at Shipley on, how I should look and present and all that, and so to have makeup and all that was, whoa. But, it's been a fun ride. I certainly have tried to participate in everything APMP has had to offer and tried to make it a better organization. Another memory that I had, the last conference that we had in Colorado was downtown Denver, and at the time we were approaching 800 people, which was a huge record for APMP. And I actually was a co-chairman with Dick Easom, who you know, and Eric Gregory. Dick did all the electronic work, and so everything was online, and it was flawless. Eric had the keynote speakers and had a great job. We had 5, and it was my job to have the content. And so we were really proud of the fact and smiling and gloating, thinking, wow, we've had no cancellations from speakers. We're set. We've got a good lineup. We've got a huge audience. The weather looks good. And this is the afternoon, about 2 hours before the opening evening presentation. And we're looking at each other, and we felt comfortable that we had everything in place, and we thought, wow, who's gonna open this up tonight? And all of a sudden, Baskar, I had 2 set of eyes looking at me, and I'm going, wait a minute. And so by default, with less than 2 hours of preparation, in front of the largest group that I've ever spoken in front of, 800 people, I had to get them all excited about being in Denver for this APMP conference. So probably the most nervous I've ever been. Cameras, they had the pictures of you on each side of you, 40 feet tall, so the people in the back, and I looked over there, and it's like, oh, my God. I mean, it was just petrifying. But, hey, we pulled it off. We had a good conference, and, you live through it, and, you're a better person for it, and it was a fun time.
Wow, David. I mean, these memories are really, really beautiful. Um, regarding your time as the chair and also the taken all the board position, David, do you mind sharing some of the memories over there as well, all the way being CEO in 2009?
Well, prior to 2009, I had a lot of, just ancillary positions in terms of representative trying to build APMP from the grassroots level and just participating. I felt obligated that I should give back, and so we had a lot of roles back then, and Shipley was a strong supporter from a corporate-wide perspective, and so they encouraged us to get involved. Then the second round was kind of in the mid-2000s when I got involved a little bit more seriously with the international level. And so I decided, okay, I want to run for the COO, which defaults later on into the CEO position, and then it's a 3-year tenure, if you will, until afterward you become past president. But they want the then president to benefit from your experience and lessons learned. And of course, as the COO, you get to watch the CEO and know what is expected of you. So it was a good progression. We didn't have the extensive board that Rick now has. There was just 5 of us that were in the inner circle, and then we had some other at-large people. So it was a very focused group. And I think in the CEO position, one of the things that a gentleman by the name of Dana Spears brought up was, he says, okay, we need to have some focus. What are we going to focus on? And so we asked that question of each of the board members, and we narrowed it down to 4, and you had to participate. And like, for example, one of the 4 that Dick Easom led was, I'm going to grow the chapter, period. I'm going to have more chapters at the end of this year than we had before. That's my message. My specific mission was to begin to grow the certification program. And so, Tony and Kathy, who you've talked to, make no mistake about it, they were the founders, and Kathy is still the chief practitioner evaluator and so on. But, at the board, they had stepped off now, and so it needed some new blood, and it needed some continuity. And so I made it my mission, and I think at that time, and of course it's been surpassed, but we had some of the largest growth in numbers of people going through the foundation and the practitioner. And we recognized as a board that we needed some help, and so we hired a person, which was unheard of at that point in time, to hire and pay somebody out of APMP to actually promote certification. And through those challenges and through that aggression, we were able to really begin to move the certification program to the right. And all of a sudden we had 100 here, 150 there, 150. And those were big numbers for foundation level, and 30 or 40 in the practitioner. Those were big numbers that we were really proud of. And then, like I said, just because David Winton, told the world that he was going to retire to spend more time with his ailing mother, it just happened during my tenure, and so I had the responsibility of taking David Winton out and bringing Rick Harris on. And the year after, as CEO, as the outgoing, we trained Rick Harris, and we got him through our APMP International Conference in Colorado, and that's officially when David stepped down. And after that, it's been Rick Harris ever since.
David, it's been amazing hearing all your contributions to the industry and APMP. It's been great. But now we have some fun questions for you. Our first one is, if Jurassic Park were real, would you visit it?
Yeah, I would. I've watched all those movies as quick as they've come out. And so I think it's kind of interesting. I would be fascinated with that technology and how they made it happen. I would be scared to death, like Jeff Goldblum was when that Tyrannosaurus was after him. But any place that Jimmy Buffett is serving margaritas, I'm all over it. So, that would be fun.
Absolutely. If you could change one thing about the human body or how it has evolved, what would it be?
I wish I was a little quicker in catching on to trends. And so, I think my mind is not as flexible and as nimble as it should be. That's kind of a awkward answer to that. I mean, physically, my arms and hands do what they're supposed to do, and I've been blessed to be an athlete and have athletic people in my life. And so from that perspective, it's just mentally, I always think I'm a step behind, and so I wish that I had a quicker mentality and could pick up necessary trends faster than I'm not an early adapter, and that's, I think, hurt in a few instances in my life.
Very interesting. Would you rather be a deep sea diver or an astronaut?
One of my current accounts right now is, and I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to, is the Jet Propulsion Lab out on Caltech in Pasadena. And I love the water, and I love to fish. I've declared that. But what I've learned over the last 5 years in what is really out in space that we know so little about. And the Jet Propulsion Lab does not do space exploration. All of their missions are unmanned. But because of that interest, you have learned and followed the space industry and realized that this year will be the U.S. return to manned spaceflight. And I watched with fascination, like everybody growing up in that era where every rocket that launched people out there was a mandatory television event. You sat in front of the television and watched. I know exactly where I was when the Challenger blew up. And so, I think that Space Challenge would be really, really cool, really, really fascinating. Unfortunately, I think I'm a little too old to be on one now, but if it was 30 years ago, I would certainly think about applying, because I think that would be so cool.
Yeah, space and all of that history is very fascinating. I was lucky enough to visit Huntsville a couple years ago, and just a fascinating place. So David, if you could organize a car race for you and your friends where all of you drive the same car, what car would you pick and who would you invite to the race?
One of the things in life that I never, I was poor in high school, and so I didn't have the fancy cars or the muscle cars, the Mustangs or the Camaros or so on and so forth. So I fast cars and boy, I'm not sure sometimes which end of a screwdriver to use. So I think what I would do is I would organize a race that is pretty much focused on four-wheel driving, because of the fact that I live up in Colorado, and all of us just survive in the snow in the city have four-wheel drive cars. But then, of course, in the mountains, the knowledge amongst fishermen is the farther away from the beaten path you can get, the less you are challenged by other fisher people on the waters, and so you want to get as far away as possible. So, I think I would organize a race of Jeeps or four-wheel drive vehicles. I have a Jeep, so I would say Jeep. And I would invite a lot of friends that appreciate the outdoors in the backwoods, and it would just be more of a point-to-point, who could do it the fastest. It would not be head-to-head. It would just be staggered, and who could do it the fastest, so we wouldn't be destroying each other in the land. But it would mandate that you knew how to drive your Jeep, and there would be some technically challenging terrain to make sure that you knew how to drive your car. But it would almost be as much for the beauty of the race as it would be for the finish and the fastest time.
I really love that. More of the journey and doing it for the time. Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
So if you could listen to just one band for the rest of your life, which one would you pick?
Well, I grew up in the 80s. I think probably Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young.
Amazing. Is there a favorite song?
There's, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes was, of course, the fact that they went on stage at Woodstock in front of 500,000 people, and they performed that, and it was almost flawless. But, they had so many, Neil Young, Crosby, Nash, and they individually, they were all very talented. And so you have this capability that when they did stuff together, they were good. But they had to work to be together because you read about them, and they all had their issues. I mean, everything from drugs to, just getting along with one another. And yet they figured out a way to make it happen. And some of their music just, that was a heavy rock era, so it wasn't that heavy. Currently, right now, I'm into a lot more softer, maybe even some country music. But back then, they were they were the ones that filled the stadiums, and I could listen to them for quite some time. And on my iPad playlist, I think that group and its individuals have the most individual songs. So there's others, but that's where I tend to. And there's a couple others that are right up there. Elton John would be another one, and Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones. But I think it leans to Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young.
Yeah, great choice.
Yep.
So this is kind of a timely question. Would you rather travel for the rest of your life, only staying in one place for 3 months or so, or never leave your home again?
Well, those are kind of extremes. I've only been outside the United States twice, and that's been to Mexico. And then when I was young, I got up to Vancouver, British Columbia. So unlike a lot, and maybe I'm missing a lot, but I don't have a desire to travel all over the world, okay? I've never been to Europe, don't know that I will get there. China, my daughter's going to Tokyo, or was, for the Olympics, and I thought that was exciting, but I decided I didn't want to be there. So, I am happy, I am content, I like my house, I like sitting outside on the drive. We have a Sunday tradition where we meet on our driveway and we just kind of grill and talk and just share victories and defeats of the week, and so it's a very comfortable feeling. But I also, the United States has some interesting, bits and pieces. I like Southern California a lot. I like the Midwest. I like the Rockies. So, I don't know that I could stay in my house permanently, but I certainly, I've worked out of my house now for the past 12 years. And so this is not unusual for me. We actually are under a stay-at-home. Colorado is under that. And so now I'm forced to. It's like, I need to get out of the house. But no, I actually, I enjoy the house. And I have a wonderful office surrounded, like I said, by a huge layout of trains. And so my office is unlike any other office you've probably ever seen. And so I can live here quite comfortably.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a great setup and a great location.
I enjoy it. I don't like the yard work, but I enjoy it.
Yeah. Okay, last one of this round. If you could breed a hybrid animal of any two species, what would you choose?
A hybrid animal between any two species. I have always been a dog lover, so a large dog. The dogs that I've had of late have been Labradors, and so I like the thought of the Labrador because of their passion for men. What everybody says about no matter what kind of day you're having, no matter how hard you think it is or how mad you are or just, how crappy your day's been, a dog looks at like you and those big eyes just say, I love you. And they just say, wow, you are the... So I think because of that commitment and that undying, passion for the ownership and the relationship. And then probably something along the lines of maybe I don't know, maybe a lion or some kind of large cat, simply to protect itself. We have I live kind of on the edge of a rural area, and so at night you can hear coyotes and howling. There's foxes. We've had a bear on our deck, and so you worry about the safety of your animal out at night, laying out in your backyard, that kind of thing. And so I think that you want the passion of a dog and its undying love, but you want the fact that you want it to be the king of the world. When it's outside, you just want it to be, don't mess with me.
Yeah.
Here's my house. Here's my property. Here's my owner's mansion, which this house is certainly anything but that. But it's like don't even tread on me. So my dogs are big, so their bark is deep. And, the UPS guy and the FedEx guy won't come near our house, even though these dogs would lick them to death. But still, there are wild animals that we're concerned about. So we would want to make sure that they have that, king of the forest, if you will.
Yeah, great choices.
So, David, I think looking back, you had a fantastic career and a fantastic life as you started with. Looking back, who are the people who have been most influential in your life and career so far?
There are three people. My father, I think he gave me my business work ethic. And, he said, if you're going to do something, do it right and, get started and just don't procrastinate, but get out there and get it done. So, that's where I think I get my work ethic. I had a friend across the street who was in sales, and I have never, ever, ever been associated with someone who had the customer service mentality that he had. And so, he worked out of his garage as his office. And it was so funny. His business attire was boxer shorts and a T-shirt. But, he got on that phone, and, of course, we didn't have, phones with cameras or anything like that. And I would sit out there in the afternoon in the sun with him and listen to him talk to his clients. He worked for Bausch & Lomb, the eye care product and the contacts and so on and so forth. And guys, there was no one in the world that offered better customer service and customer focus and that he did. And so we had a lot of conversations, and I learned a lot about the customer focus. And then specific to business development, Steve Shipley, that's not because I've worked for Steve and his name's on my check, but it's because, first and foremost, the guy's a gentleman's gentleman. Second, he's just a natural leader. And third, he's one of those people that you want to follow. You kind of had to follow him in some instances because, he was the president and the CEO. But, his leadership was not of that stature. It was, he earned your respect and he earned your following simply because you believed in what he said. He was a passionate person and always made you feel good.
If you look back, what's the best piece of advice you received from and from whom?
Start early. I think that was initiated by my father. We always tend to procrastinate, and of course, the larger the project, and you get into the proposal world, and you kind of don't have that luxury because you have a deadline that's very real at the end that says you have to have this by that date. But there are still opportunities to procrastinate. Like, for example, earlier in this conversation, we talked about capture, and a lot of people will not do capture until the very end when I would suggest it's too late. Some of our authors don't get started on writing until, oh my goodness, the pen's down, is tomorrow, maybe I should start today. And so probably, the biggest, simplest lesson learned is to, start early, and it doesn't have to be everything at once, but one of the things we determined early and is continually repeated every effort that I work on is the earlier you start and the more you get done on an incremental basis, the higher the quality. The higher the quality is of the document that you produce. And quality is a very, very significant contributor to the evaluator's belief and comfort level in evaluating your opportunity. And so just something as simple as getting started a little bit early, I think has been a very, very important aspect and a very simple and easy thing to suggest to follow.
That's a great piece of advice, David. Definitely, that's something that we all can relate to. That just comes from experience. Thank you.
Yeah, it sounds like you've received a lot of great advice and had some great mentors and colleagues over the years. But what advice would you give someone else wanting to pursue a career similar to yours?
Something that we haven't talked about that is incredibly important. The largest effort that I worked on was 17 months, and it happened at a strategic time in my life, which coincided with my oldest daughter's freshman year of high school. And because at that time, again, virtual opportunities and virtual work was not nearly as easy to accomplish as it is today, we were forced to be on site. And so basically, I missed my oldest daughter's entire freshman year of high school. And, you know, you think back about that, and for a young lady, that's first dates, that's first dances. My daughter was an athlete, so as a freshman in tennis, she went to state, and I wasn't there to see that. And it just goes on and on. I missed holidays, I missed anniversaries, I missed birthday parties, and so on and so forth. And so one of the things that I would make sure that somebody understands is make sure you love the business, because it is a business that we can love. I mean, it is. And sometimes, you know, and it was my belief that my position was so valuable that without me, the project would suffer. And so I sacrificed erroneously on my behalf at the expense of family and loved ones. And so the activity that I demand and can demand in my position at Shipley, as well as with young people that are getting in here, is don't ever not balance your life and your job. And you know, I would say now prioritize your life within reason. I mean, obviously you have to contribute, and we all know that there are 50-hour weeks, 60-hour weeks, 70-hour weeks, and longer. I mean, just recently we had some people that spent all night, and I thought that those days were over. But sometimes we mismanage or things go wrong, and you know, you do that. But make those the exception and not the rule, to constantly be proud of the fact and boast, oh yeah, you know, I had 14 100-hour weeks, which I did at the end of that proposal. 14 100-hour back-to-back weeks. No, that's not right. And I used to boast and say that, and now I look at myself and say, you stupid idiot, what were you thinking? But okay, it led to the largest proposal that I've ever won, $68 billion on an individual effort. But was it worth it? And you know, you struggle with that. And so my advice to people getting into it is, you know, understand the balance and make sure that family is at least 50%, or your outside life. I mean, you may not have a family, but your outside life, make sure it's at least the 50% that it should be, and minimize the working on the weekends and the long hours. And you know, if you, like now is a very difficult time because we're home and we're by our computers all the time. And so on a Saturday and a Sunday, I bet you guys even looked at your computers over the weekend. And I challenge people now stay away from it. Just figure out ways to not even look at it. It'll be there Monday, and typically it can wait till Monday. And that's a tough discipline to work with in this, because you think that with everything being so time sensitive, I need to log in every day. And we have to get away from that thought. We have to get away from that and just tell ourselves it can wait until Monday.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice and a great reminder for all of us to make sure we're finding that balance and prioritizing our friends and families in our lives.
Sure.
Yeah. So you have accomplished so much over the years, been so instrumental with APMP and Shipley and all the trainings and the proposals that you've been able to influence and help win, billions and billions of dollars. But what's next for you?
Ouch. We have a succession plan at Shipley, and we have to know who we can count on, and so on and so forth. So, unfortunately, I say it unfortunately only because, unfortunately for me, I'm 65 now. I told everybody that I would, our current leadership is slowly, we lost Janae, Eric, retired officially. Janae was our CFO. And now we have others that are thinking about it. And so I said, okay, I'm going to help, this current leadership of Shipley move on. And then when they're all replaced and everything's running smoothly, I'll step down. But that's no more than 5 years away. So, and then after that, I'm thinking at that point in time, I'm hoping, nothing is assured, but I'm guessing that with 2 daughters, I might be a grandfather. I'm not yet, but I'm hoping that I will have grandkids and deserve the retirement that I feel I've earned. And so, with my hobbies of fishing and with my railroad in my basement, I have a lot to keep me busy. I am not one of those folks that, oh my God, what am I going to do with all my time? It's like I wish I had more time, because it just doesn't happen yet, because I still commit 40 to 50 hours a week to Shipley. But I look forward to that. I look forward to, I have one daughter in Houston and one daughter on the West Coast in Eugene, Oregon. And if that's where they still are in 5 years, that would be fun to get out there and see those. Both of those cities are beautiful. Yeah. And it would just be fun to have little bouncing grandkids on my lap. It's been a long time since there have been young kids in my home or in my life. So that would be kind of fun. I can give them up after a few hours. That's the best part.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's a stage in life that I think all of us aspire to, and no need to say ouch there, right? You've worked hard and you deserve that next stage. So.
Yep, you bet.
So it was really lovely to have you with us at Scribble Talk, David. Hope you enjoyed it. So thank you so much for your time. It's been a privilege.
Well, I did.
Yeah,
I did, and thank you for giving me guidance. I could have faltered huge on this, but you gave me a lot of guidance, and you and Ashley did an outstanding job in coaching and leading me through it. And I hope whatever I contributed will benefit you and others. It's been a good career in the proposal world, and like I said, I've been fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of very, very talented people. And Shipley has given me an awful lot of freedom to still engage. And of course, that takes time away from Shipley, but I think we all benefit from it. And so any opportunities like this where I can give back, I feel I owe it to the industry to give back. So.
It's beautiful, David. Thank you so much. Wish you all the good health and happiness. Please continue to inspire bid and proposal colleagues and everybody around you. Stay healthy, stay happy, and I'll speak to you very soon. Thank you, David. Take care.
You do the same. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Baskar Sundaram,
signing off.